The citizens of Fate, Texas are about to choose a new city council member for Place 4. And the frontrunner in the race isn't afraid of tough questions, which is why he's here. Because it's that time again. Time for some straight talk. I'm Bunker Bob Steinhagen, and this is a special edition of The Bunker Bob Show. Greetings, thrill seekers, music lovers, conversationalists from across the fruited plains of the great state of Texas. I am your host, Bunker Bob Steinhagen, bringing you an in-depth look at the frontrunner running for Fate City Council Place 4. I'm grateful to have you watching today on the Bunker Cam via Rumble, YouTube, or Facebook, and welcome my podcast listeners who are out walking, driving in their cars, or wherever they're listening in via Spreaker, Spotify, Google Podcast, Apple Podcast, Deezer, iHeartRadio, Podchaser, or Podcast Addict, just to name a few. Now, this is the fifth election season that I have held these forums, which provides candidates the opportunity to put their best foot forward, and is why, as I have always done, along with the invitation to participate, each candidate in the race received a copy of the questions to help them decide if they want to participate, which also helps ensure that you'll only hear from serious candidates that are willing to answer hard questions. Now, rather than trying to cover countless questions that limit candidates to short-form answers, I focus on 10, including one that allows the candidate to speak to issues that may go unaddressed, all without time constraints, so we can drill down on each issue. However, when a candidate goes especially long or meanders off topic, and sometimes they do, it will be edited down for time while ensuring that the key points remain. Now, before I begin, I always let candidates know that they can re-answer or restate anything they say, because the purpose of this forum is to allow them to be the best that they can be. So, let me introduce Rick Maneval. Now, Rick is a native Texan, born and raised in Houston, Texas. I'm sorry, I was too. So, glad to be here, though.
Left there a long time ago.
Yeah, me too. Well, he dedicated his entire career to the Dallas Morning News, where he served as a senior financial analyst for the last 17 years. Rick and his wife, Sarah, have been active members of Christ Church Rockwall for many years, with Rick serving on the board for 15 of those and currently leading a small home group. They also have a grown son named John. Now, where is John? Is he around this area?
He still lives in Garland.
Garland, okay.
Where we used to live, and he actually got a degree from UNT.
Okay.
He's not really doing anything with that right now, but he works at Half Price Books.
Nice.
At their wholesale and distribution center.
Very good.
Yeah.
Excellent. Yeah. Well, it's nice to have him close, right?
Yeah.
Yeah.
He's with a good company.
That's good.
Yeah.
Well, since moving to Fate, Rick has enjoyed judging homeschool speech and debate tournaments and volunteering with Helping Hands of Rockwall Pantry to Pantry program. Well, it is great to have you on the show.
Thank you.
Yes, sir. Well, the first question is an easy one. Why are you running, Rick?
All right. Well, since I arrived in Fate, I've just observed a couple of things going on that I think I could help with. One is the rapid growth, and it's not something I'm a sage on, but I think I could offer some advice on how to deal with that. We I'm also doing this at a time in my life when I think I could devote time to this. I'm retired.
Okay.
And I could devote the time to it that I think a lot of talented people do this job, and it's a big burden. Yeah. So I could devote a lot of time to it.
Yeah, I like the way you said that, because, you know, a city council, especially in a home rule city, is you're not a managing council. You're a governing board, essentially.
Right.
So your city manager basically runs the city. So
that's true.
Yeah, I like the way you put, you know, you're giving advice and that kind of thing.
Yeah, it is really like a board.
Yeah. Well, very good. I think it'll certainly fill your time, won't it?
I think it will. Excellent.
Well, though the race for mayor and city council is technically a nonpartisan one, which political party best reflects your values?
Well, I'm actually a Republican.
Okay.
And I've always been a Republican. I'm a conservative. I want small government that doesn't keep branching off into areas that wouldn't really be considered essential, especially for city government. I also, as I've gotten older, I realized it's kind of nice to be able to say the first general election I voted in 1980, I got to vote for my first president, Ronald Reagan.
There you go. Yeah.
So,
very good. All right. Well, thank you very much. Well, so Rick, what is your vision for the city of Fate?
all right, there's several areas that I want to work on. One is the area of growth. And I just think that the council needs to look at things that are brought before them and okay or approve things that will benefit the citizens, not just the developers. And this will come up later in the interview, but I want to definitely say I'm a firm no on more apartment complexes. We have apartment complexes. My experience in watching these things in other places is they start out looking okay, but they're all rental forever and they don't stay nice. We also need to get our police and fire department fully staffed. The department is budgeted and planned for last year and this year to be at 32 officers, and they have been stuck at 29 for quite a while. And that creates staffing issues or just scheduling issues, and then it's not the optimal protection for the citizens. There's also, I think there's a problem with the downtown revitalization efforts. I would like to see what we could do to bring a cohesiveness to what you see in downtown Fate. If you go down there, and I don't want to minimize the things that the city is, projects that they've done, but if you go down there, and especially on Main Street, you would find it hard to believe that Fate has had as a goal for years to revitalize downtown. Some of the old stores have been vacated recently, and I just think what a shame. That whole area could just be a better downtown.
Okay, very good. Thank you very much. Well, the next question is, how often do you vote in city council elections, and how often do you attend the meetings? And what have you learned from that experience? The reason I'm asking this, Rick, is because neither one of your opponents has actually voted in any city elections. Does it bother you at all knowing that neither of your opponents has even voted in a municipal? Am I correct in that? Is that what you understand?
My understanding is that neither one of them have.
Yeah.
The question, one of my opponents, the one who's actively campaigning, has addressed it on her Facebook.
Oh, okay.
And it was sort of kind of a meandering answer having something to do with youth and lack of understanding of the process.
Well, it may be why neither of your opponents are here. They don't want to have to face this kind of question.
Yeah, and I don't want you to get me wrong. I've met both of them. I've met Emily, who's actively campaigning a number of times. She's a delightful person, and it does sort of leave you wondering.
Yeah.
Why the interest all of a sudden?
Well, it does. It certainly does me, because that's what I do, is focus on politics. And when people jump into races and they have never voted in the race that they're running for, it just kind of it's a head scratcher for sure. Do you attend city council meetings?
I started attending city council meetings last summer.
Okay.
It's probably around December I began attending as many of them as I can in the last maybe 3 months. I think I've made all of them.
Okay.
So it's...
what have you learned from that?
Well, I've learned that it can be a thankless job. I've also learned that the planning and zoning is a big issue, and I have not made it to any of their meetings. And that's one thing I want to say. Every meeting I've gone to, it's at least one item on the agenda, and sometimes 2 or 3 items on the agenda were brought to the council by the planning and zoning committee. So it's almost like if you're not going, and I'm saying this mea culpa, if you're not going to the planning and zoning meetings, you're in some ways missing half the story. So
yeah, very good. Well, the one issue that concerns every citizen in Rockwall County is the exponential growth, which includes housing, commercial development, traffic congestion, and of course, growth in government, which means higher taxes, and is why we're going to tackle each in turn. So let's start with the explosive growth in housing like master planned communities or multifamily apartments and townhomes. Do you think the city is on the right track when approving these new developments? And are they contributing to or taking away from the lifestyle that the citizens of Fate desire? And why or why not? What do you think, Rick?
Sure. Well, biggest issue, the roads in Fate.
Well, we're going to talk about roads.
Yeah.
That'll be another question.
Yeah. But I wanted to address it.
Okay, go ahead. Yeah.
In terms of this question.
Okay.
Because the roads have not kept up, and that's part of the problem with the development.
Okay, good point.
So there are still, because developers are coming here, there are still many prime locations that single-family homes could be built. If my thinking is if a new development of single-family homes were to come to the city, and it's planned for an area where it's going to burden the roads, then I don't know that I would want to approve it. If a new development is going to be putting in an area where the traffic coming out of the area would not directly go into the roads that are so heavily burdened, then we could consider that. I think it's a hard thing to tell developers no, and some people compare this to trampling on their property rights.
Yes, they do.
They do, but
forget everybody else's rights.
Yeah, I would. I think it's time to look at some of these developers and say, you've been getting the okay, and things have been made easy for you by a lot of legislation that comes out of Austin.
Yes,
and Austin has been way behind on getting our roads up to date. And so I'd be willing to look at a developer and say, because the roads are not built by the county, they're not built by the city. All these numbered roads are the responsibility of the state, and they have dragged their feet on them. I want to say something nice about someone that as part of this campaign I had a nice visit with a couple of weeks ago, and that's our Rockwall County Commissioner for my precinct, John Stacy.
John is awesome.
Yeah, he was terrific. He gave me 2 hours of his time one afternoon.
Yeah,
and
he's a smart guy.
Smart,
yeah.
and is making a valiant effort. And he is after this.
He is.
He is after the legislators. He's after the the highway department. And he is down there. He deserves our respect.
Definitely.
And didn't really think about asking him this, but what can we as citizens do to support his efforts?
Yeah.
I don't know if it's calling or writing or showing up on a bus one day with a bunch of Rockwall County citizens that have been stuck in traffic for years. But
one thing that does help him is when city government officials will come out and to a county commissioner's court and articulate, hey, thank you for supporting us. John is not alone in that. He's got the commissioner's court has completely turned and is now incredibly focused on this. And John is just doing a magnificent job.
Good. Okay. Well,
I'm glad we agree on that.
When it came to the roads, I wanted to make sure he gets some credit.
Yeah,
we're going to get some new roads soon, hopefully, but one of them might need to be named after John Stacy.
That may be a good idea.
Yes.
But when we're talking about development, so you that's great, and the impact fees that cities can charge on developers. You want to, I know that the Texas legislature, and by the time this is posted, I think with MUDs, they're trying to. They're trying to eliminate that in the state legislature.
Yeah, that would be good.
That would be very harmful. To
eliminate the MUDs.
To eliminate. I'm sorry. To eliminate the MUDs would be great, but to eliminate the impact fees.
Yes.
That MUD.
Yeah. Impact fees good.
Yes.
MUDs not so great.
Yeah. So there are those opportunities for cities to to charge developers for that impact.
Yeah.
Okay. Very good. Well, study after study shows that tax incentives don't pay off in real economic gains, but that hasn't stopped municipalities from offering tax breaks or even using taxpayer dollars to fund infrastructure projects as a way to attract commercial development and certain businesses. This, of course, puts government in the position of picking winners and losers on the backs of taxpayers. So, where do you stand on this issue, and how should the city go about deciding when it's appropriate to use tax incentives like tax breaks or taxpayer-funded infrastructure projects to attract businesses and commercial development?
Yes. Our city is booming. That's a term that's used. And when we're in a booming city, I find it kind of hard to justify giving tax incentives to a developer who wants to come in to a booming area. I just don't see that. If a developer was to come to the council, or they were to have come to the economic development department of the city and they presented something that would bring some good paying jobs, and by that I mean non-retail, which we've got a lot of, and it was a verifiable proposition that they're going to bring some jobs to the city of Fate, where people could actually live in Fate and drive somewhere and possibly make a living wage. That's something I would look at, but it would have to be verifiable, and absolutely there'd have to be something in there. If it doesn't work out, they come in and they say we're going to bring 50 jobs and they're going to pay $75,000 or something that people could possibly live on, and they don't do it, then I'd want there to be something in the agreement that we could take it back.
All right. Very good. Thank you.
Sure.
Well, it seems like regardless of where you live, traffic congestion is getting progressively worse, which is beginning to have a real impact on the quality of life for many. What can the city do to improve this problem, or more specifically, what will you do as council member to address the increased traffic congestion that's agonizing for so many?
Yes.
What do you think?
Well, the traffic is a difficult problem, and I've encountered this in meeting people, knocking on doors. I had my list of things I wanted to talk to people, but I have been amazed at how many times this gets brought up first, and people are just upset about it. It's a bad situation because, as I've learned, the state is responsible for all of these roads where all the congestion is. The street I live on in my neighborhood in Wood Creek, there's no congestion on Mulberry Drive, and the city's responsible for that. But the city's not responsible for all the major roads that are numbered. And
it's a little bit of an unfair question, but I put it in here because there is so much. I get so many comments about traffic that people want asked. And so I ask that because I think very few people are aware that the city has very little control over most of the roads that are under construction or need to be. Yeah,
and it's frustrating to me to find out because when I looked at running for this office, I realized, one thing I did, I looked at my tax bill and I realized there's ISD and there's county and MUD, and then there's the city. And I'm thinking, I'll have some influence on that, but I want to do what I can on that. But I think when it comes to the roads, I think we have some influence. I think we have the ear. Again, I'll mention our county commissioner, John Stacy.
Yes.
He's got the ear of, he's accessible. That's one thing that I like about him. And he's down there in Austin fighting for us to get these roads.
Yes, he is.
When it comes to the projects that keep clogging up our roads with more residents, which, it's good to have more neighbors, but you're not always happy to see them when you're stuck in traffic behind them.
Yeah.
Again, I think it's time that the city may have to put its foot down. We're not saying no to development, but it's got to make sense and not overburden us. And there's still projects that are going to happen that are previously approved by prior councils. So, even if we were to say no to a home builder, there's still going to be things coming. They're in the pipeline that we can't stop. Saying no to developers, my thought is the land won't go away. It'll still be there. It'll be appreciating in value while the roads are getting built.
Very good. Thank you very much. Mm-hmm. Well, President Trump initiated the Department of Government Efficiency, or DOGE, which not only uncovered outrageous waste in our federal government, but also exposed an entirely new generation to the reality best articulated by President Reagan, who said that government is not the solution to our problems, government is the problem. So what is your philosophy about municipal government growth, and where do you draw the line between what constitutes an essential government service that warrants taxpayer funding and wasteful spending that should be prohibited? Rick, what do you think?
Mm-hmm. Well, I think a DOGE-like effort could be useful for probably any government budget. In a budget the size of our cities, there's bound to be something.
Well, and the city of Fate gets audited as well.
Yes, they do. Yeah. They do. They get audited to make sure all the expenditures have been properly planned and approved.
Yep.
That audit doesn't necessarily mean that every expense was worthwhile or efficient. So that's one thing the city is proud of, and I think they've got a good foundation there, that the audits have been clean. But it doesn't mean everything that's in that budget had to be spent.
Yeah, and unlike DOGE, I mean, what DOGE is finding out is that if the government had to go through an audit, it couldn't survive. That was my point.
No.
Not that Fate needs a DOGE.
Fortunately, our city passes an audit, which is
definitely
commendable.
Yes.
Thank you to. There's some people down there
who
have
you've got a great staff.
Kept things clean. But I think with 3 new council members coming on, fresh eyes,
a new mayor,
yep, and 2 new council members,
yep,
that every time you get a fresh set of eyes, you're going to look at it. And that's one thing I had to do in my work with the Dallas Morning News and financial planning. Every time I went into an area of the business I hadn't worked with, I had to ask a lot of questions. And there'll certainly be a lot of questions in this, and it's not to put people on the spot. It's just to make sure we understand, and make sure the spending is in line.
I think the voters are asking you to put everybody on the spot so that someone's looking.
Yes.
Yeah.
But on the spot to have to explain.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah.
Not in a negative way.
Right.
Yeah.
I worked as a senior financial analyst. That's what I did. I worked at the Dallas Morning News a long time, but the last 17 years was as a senior financial analyst, working on budgets and forecasts and looking at opportunities. And one tough part of it was our business was always declining, which was rough because we were always looking for things that we could cut. And that became
I find
tiresome.
Isn't that interesting though? In private sector, when things don't work out, you stop doing it, you cut back.
Yes.
Government is just the opposite.
Right.
When it doesn't work, you throw more money at it, and that's sometimes the rub.
Right. Well, in business, we had advertisers and subscribers, and they were dwindling. We could not tell the remaining advertisers and subscribers, we've just tripled your bill because we want to keep doing all the things we've always done. So budgets had to be looked at.
Yeah.
As far as essential, almost half the budget, 49%, is public safety. And I consider that essential. And as I mentioned before, we're down 3 people. We need to look at what it takes. I've talked to the police chief, who's been very helpful to me as far as understanding things. And he said it's a combination of things. Pay, equipment, and we have our facility is so lacking that we don't have. It's a very poor situation for the police station.
Well, aren't you now splitting the public safety so they're not basically cross-dressing where you're going to have an actual police department and fire department?
They will be.
Yeah, isn't that happening now?
Yes, they're going to split them.
Yeah.
They won't be in the same. I mean, they won't be.
So there's gonna be costs associated with that, I assume.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And and they're looking at ways to, possibly, I think they call them triple certified, which is a level of police officer that can do I think it's firefighting.
Well, that's what they do now.
Yeah, EMT and police.
But y'all are going to split them now.
They may be, yeah. I'm not sure they've made the final cut, the decision. It was raised, and I didn't get the sense that they were actually ready. Let's pull the lever on that.
Yeah.
But I consider that the police department, fire department essential, and especially getting us staffed. The police chief has explained that we have a safe community, and we have, all the neighborhoods are nice neighborhoods, and I believe that's true.
Well, and you think back to Town East Mall, the Town East area in Mesquite, or where we're from, Sharpstown area.
Yeah.
These used to be very nice areas,
Sure.
but the more density that you put in through apartment complexes and things like that, crime goes up. Now you don't go to Sharpstown Mall. Now you don't go to Town East and feel safe.
No.
Because of that. And so, yes, right now you are, but I think it speaks to your density issue. Especially with multifamily
Sure.
Apartments.
Yeah, I think if we have more high density, then we need to factor that into how many officers we need. But if you look around and you look at the nice neighborhoods like Wood Creek and Chamberlain Crossing, and those are nice neighborhoods. You're not going to find hopefully not find a little den of thieves operating in there. But I think we could look at increasing the police and fire staff.
All right. Anything else?
Well, as far as what's essential, non-essential, there was a number that jumped out on the budget to apparently a lot of people in the 2025 budget.
Okay.
And that was a line item that increased 106% year over year. And that is for the city's contributions, or the city's charitable contributions. They went up from, and these are kind of small numbers, but it's where I look at trends. And in 2024, it was 17,000. In 2025, it's planned at 35,000. And from what I've heard, these are all worthwhile organizations, charities that deserve the support of citizens.
Right.
But it comes back to what Reagan said about the government is the problem. And I just think it's easy for these organizations, and some of them I know help people who are problems for the city. But I think it's easy for these organizations to just let the city know we need more money from you, and then the city can just add, in this case, increase a budget from 17, increase it by 18,000 with, there really wasn't any, public discussion. It was not.
Wow.
There's so many things in the budget. And like I said, I have not seen the actual list. I think someone read them off to me. And they're good things like Meals on Wheels and Boys and Girls Clubs.
Yeah.
But they're things that you've heard of, and you would think, if I knew they needed some money, let me know. My wife and I give money to charity. We support our church, but we also support other things. And it's something I've read somewhere. If I think of something I want done and I want done right, my first thought is not, well, I'm going to go to my government and tell them, I need you to start taking care of this problem that I've discovered.
Yeah.
Will you start donating our taxpayer dollars to charities?
Yeah.
So
that's not the role of government at all.
No, and some people have looked at it, and it's one of those issues that's kind of hard. Cause for one, it's not a huge amount, but it's the trend I see.
It's still taxpayer dollars.
It's taxpayer dollars.
Yeah,
and it's
how can a politician have the right to be charitable on my behalf if I haven't given consent?
And I think talk about the last thing I do is I go to the government. I'm thinking, well, I have to own property. They have to appraise my property, and then they have to send me a tax bill. I pay my tax bill. And then part of my taxes goes to support some charities, which I think we should look at. We have events in downtown Fate, like Celebrate Fate. Make sure that every charity that we in the past has thought is worthwhile, make sure they can all have a table there. I was at the city hall yesterday, and one of the charities, I'm pretty sure it was one of them, had a little display in the lobby of the city hall, and I thought, well, that's moving in the right direction. Let them say, here's some space. So I think there's a better way than just letting government do the job for us.
Yeah. All right. Very good. Well, property valuations have increased at such astronomical proportions that every city in Rockwall County has continually lowered the municipal tax rate year after year while still increasing revenue. Under what circumstances would you support an increase to the city's tax rate, and would you support an increase for the next fiscal year? Now, one of what's interesting is you say you live in Mud Creek or Wood Creek, which is a mud. And
yes.
So you pay a significant additional tax.
Yes, I do.
And so any tax rate increase is really going to hit those of you who live in muds,
yes.
Especially hard. So how do you feel about this?
Well, I don't really like the muds, and I've come to learn we don't have much say in what they do. It's more like no say. So there are two ways of calculating the tax rate that the state makes available without having to go to the voters. And one is the no new revenue.
Yes.
No new revenue.
Yep.
And that there's worksheets behind it. It would.
It basically will keep your revenue flat.
Yeah, revenue flat. It doesn't guarantee that everybody pays the same amount as they did.
Right.
But the revenue on the existing properties is supposed to bring in it's supposed to be the same amount of revenue as last year. The city.
And they will tell you what that tax rate is.
Yes.
Whether higher or lower.
Yeah.
Yes.
So cities will see added revenue because, like in Fate, there's more development.
Yes.
So you add more roofs, then there's going to be more revenue. So that's excluded as far as an increase. The city's also seeing sales tax growth. We're adding retail every year, and there's more in the pipeline, so that's a good thing. So at this point, I would say, and I've said in a forum we had the other night, that I think we would not need we would not need to raise the property tax rate in the foreseeable future. Okay. I've looked at the budget books for the past several years, and they have a page at the beginning, every one, they show how much is coming in from new properties, and it's a sizable amount. It's less than $1 million, but it's maybe 600, 800,000. So it's a nice chunk when you're talking about our annual budget for this year is $17.4 million. So you talk about pulling in that much extra, and then the sales, that much extra in property tax, and then sales tax revenues going up every year. So that's a good thing, and I would plan to stick with the no new revenue rate. There's also the voter approval tax rate, which is, it almost sounds like you have to get the voter approval, but it's the rate that you can raise up to. You can raise up to 3.5% without voter approval.
Yes, right.
And you can raise up to 3.5% to cover maintenance and operations. And my thinking is, I'm a conservative. I want to keep taxes low, but I don't want to strangle our essential services. And I also feel like this voter approval tax rate was implemented by the state in the spirit of tax relief. So I don't think this was a way it wasn't a money grab. It was a way to keep cities from, hitting people with 8, 9, 10% increases year over year.
Yeah.
So if costs were going up, I could see using that. I'm running for a 3-year term, and I'm in good health. We'll see how I feel after one term. But I could see a city having to use the voter approval rate at some point up to some level. It's up to 3.5.
Well, a lot of cities do, and still lower the tax rate because it's all based upon the the appraisal.
Right.
That's what, and so everyone's appraisals have just skyrocketed.
Yeah, and they could. Yeah.
Yeah. So you can still see a lower tax rate, but you're still hitting both of those minimum standards.
Yeah.
Yeah. Very good. Well, are there other issues that we haven't talked about that you plan to address if elected?
Well, I think we've covered most of the issues, but I wanted to address something that I have heard about on the campaign trail.
Okay.
There are some things being said about my positions which are just completely false.
Okay.
And they've come back to me more than once, so I know someone, don't know who, is saying these things, and some of them are just outlandish.
Okay.
And I wanted to address them. One is that I want to cut the city budget, just chop it by 20%, which would just be outrageous. There's no way in a city budget of $17.4 million, it'd be like taking $3.5 million out of it. That's not going to happen. My intention is to look and ask questions, just make sure things are right. And in a budget that small, and you see the services are provided, that actually to say that I would cut the budget by 20%, that's ridiculous.
Okay.
There's another is that I want to cut the police department. And I made it clear in this interview, I want to fully staff and probably add some officers to the police department. I have made references to that there's an aspect of our public safety. We passed a bond issue. The citizens passed it. And there's a $20 million bond issue to do several things, but the biggest is to build a police station. And I've said that bond needs to be carefully managed, and I think some people have twisted that to mean he's going to cut something. Well,
okay.
The bond is the amount.
Yeah.
We get the amount, and I've just stressed that it's critical that we manage that, because if we don't manage it and we get a police station that goes over budget, or we build the police station but we can't buy the fire truck, we'll have to go to the voters and explain why they didn't get all the benefits that they voted for. Or worst case is that we'd have to go back and ask for more.
Well, and I think that's the key, because I would say that 70% of all government kind of projects that they ask bonds for end up going over budget because they're not well managed.
Yeah.
So I think that because of, the cost of things go up every year.
Yes, they do.
So yeah, I think that if anyone, I think what you're doing and what you're saying is exactly what I think your taxpayers would want to know, that
right.
You are going to be a
right.
fiscally responsible.
Make sure we get what we want for the $20 million.
Yeah, definitely.
Another thing that don't know who it is, but it's come back to me. Some have said, I want to stop all development in Fate. Just like, boom. Well, that's not the case.
I don't even know that you can. That's not even possible.
No.
Yeah.
So I don't think I could. I just want us to look at the new projects that come to us. We've still got plenty in the pipeline. But as I said, we need to look at things if they're going to be, putting in a huge subdivision and just pouring more cars onto one road that's already overburdened, then we need to say no to that.
So I've had candidates in this. I'm not sure if it's Fate or Heath or Rockwall, but there are candidates who are saying that they would like to see a moratorium on development until certain things can happen. I think it was maybe Heath, a couple of Heath candidates that were talking about that. So would you support a moratorium on housing developments until that?
That is such a radical move to make. I don't think I would say we need a moratorium.
Okay.
I just, I might have to know more about what would be entailed in a moratorium.
Yeah.
But the ones I've heard about, I think there's one out in Princeton.
Mm-hmm.
It was only for a few months.
Yeah.
I mean, it's not the issues we're facing with the roads being behind. It's going to take a while to build those roads. So, I think we could look at one area, one situation at a time. Hopefully, if one of the roads gets rebuilt, it's widened and it's serving the community, then maybe a develop next that goes in. So it's not like we need a moratorium period.
Right. Right. Okay.
That's what.
So you're able to clarify those misunderstandings.
I hope so. There's
misinformation that's
still
out there.
be development.
Yeah. All right.
No putting an end to it.
Okay.
That's not me.
Okay. Very good. Well, Rick, now is your chance to tell voters why you are the best choice to be their representative on the Fayette City Council. So take it away.
All right. Well, first of all, I want to thank you again, Bob, for having me here. I want to thank all of the voters who are hopefully still listening to this interview. As you make your choice in this election, I hope you will look at my key positions. First of all, fiscal responsibility. We have to manage the budget in such a way that the citizens have confidence in how their tax dollars are being spent. There's also responsible development. Growth must benefit the citizens and enhance the quality of life. Then there's public safety. That's probably the most important issue to our quality of life. Right now, our city has 3 open positions in the police department and hasn't been able to fill them for quite some time. We need to look at paying properly and providing the equipment that will attract the officers that we need. We also have a $20 million bond that's been passed. That money is here. It can't be reduced. It needs to be managed, and it will benefit the city. And the citizens expect the benefit from that bond issue to happen. So we must manage that to make sure we deliver everything that was promised. And we must do all of this in a spirit of transparency and openness. I would like to say something else about my experience. I have mentioned my years of working on budgets. I also had the incredible opportunity to serve for many years on the board of our church, where my wife and I have been active for years. During the time that I was on the board, we purchased land in McLennan Chisholm. We raised funds. We had capital campaigns. We also designed and built a brand new church. Then, after all of that was done, our longtime pastor was past retirement age. He retired, and we had to make the crucial choice on a new pastor, which we did. All of these things were done with a lot of prayer. I want to say it does say something to be able to accomplish these things. It does say something about my character and my leadership that after leaving that board, after 15 years, my wife and I are still members of that church, and I didn't make any enemies during my years of service on that board. I think I can bring that kind of conservative Christian leadership to the city council. I hope that I can earn your vote for City Council Place 4 in the May election. Thank you.
As you can tell, Rick Maneval truly desires to earn your vote. If you have more questions of him or wish to know more about his campaigns, I posted links to his website or Facebook page in the description of today's show. Now, early voting begins on Monday, April 22nd and goes through Tuesday, April 29th, with the election day on Saturday, May 3rd. Now, you're watching this because you want to be an informed voter, so be sure to share the link of this program with your friends and neighbors who can vote in this race. So until next time, I'm Bunker Bob Steinhagen, looking forward to seeing you at the polls. Blessings.